Looks great.
Excellent. So today I'm going to be talking about cannabis and sports, but specifically weightlifting, and a little bit about me. I've been smoking cannabis or part of the community for the last 20 years. And 9 years ago, I co-founded MCR Labs, a cannabis testing laboratory here in Massachusetts. And since then, I've been overseeing the MCR brand, technology, any kind of development, and IT. On the sports side, I've been competing in some sports, one sport or another for many years on the national stage, or qualified for the national stage for rugby, sumo wrestling, strongman, and Olympic weightlifting. And Olympic weightlifting, the sport of the snatch and the clean and jerk, pick up heavy weight overhead. That's a sport that I spent the biggest amount of time in, have coached for many years, and have a couple national medals. And today I want to bring those two things together, the cannabis and the weightlifting. So the general concept is we have this, we stress ourselves generally. And if we're able to recover from that stress, then we're able to withstand more stress after the recovery. And specific to weightlifting, that means you lift something heavy, you break down your muscles, and you stress your nervous system. If you can stay hydrated, eat enough, the right things, and sleep, then you're gonna come back and you're gonna rebuild yourself and be stronger than you were before. And so let's say one day you wake up and you're feeling unsexy, weak, unhealthy, and you decide to go to the gym in the morning. You go to the gym, you see a barbell on the floor, 100 pounds, and you're thinking, okay, I'll go lift this up. You lift it up a couple times. You lift it up a couple more times, a couple more times, a couple more times. You're feeling good. You leave the gym. You go about your day. You're thinking, I did such a good thing for myself. I'm going to go to the gym again. And you go again that evening to the gym, and you see that 100 pounds that you were lifting earlier. You try to pick it up, and you're not able to. Okay, it's a little ego bruising. And so you try 90 pounds and you're barely able to lift that. And you're defeated, you feel defeated, you go home, you sulk, you didn't recover. You did not benefit from the stress and from the recovery. The next day you wake up and you're feeling sore, you're feeling tired, you're not into it. Okay, another day passes. The day after that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go back to the gym, I'm gonna try it again. You go to the gym, you approach the 90 pounds that embarrassed you last time, you lift it up, it feels good. You put on 100 pounds, you lift that up, that feels good. You put on 110 pounds, and you're able to lift it up, and probably weren't able to before because you stressed yourself, and you recovered. And then you decide, okay, I like this lifestyle, I want to keep getting better, I want to keep getting stronger, and you decide, I'm going to start going to the gym 3 times per week. And you start doing this, and it is train, lifting weights, breaking yourself down, stressing yourself, sleep, eat, train, sleep, eat, train 3 times a week. And you do this for a couple months, 3, 4, 5 months, but in 4 months, you stop getting stronger. And someone tells you, you just need to go to the gym more often. So you start going 4 times a week. Again, okay, you're more hungry, you eat more, you sleep more, you train more, 3, 4, 5 months go by, you're getting stronger until you're not getting stronger anymore. But you know the solution. You need to stress yourself more so that you can recover more and get stronger. So you start going to the gym 5 times per week. And you're still trying to train, but then something happens. And you're not getting stronger anymore. You're irritable. You lose sleep and you can't eat. You're wide awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. And after training, when before, a burrito and a half was easy going, now you're just not craving anything. And this happens to a lot of athletes, top level, beginners, everything. And that's where cannabis comes in, because cannabis has this awesome power of making us hungry with the munchies and helping us sleep. Not all cannabis products, but the right ones. So Some practical advice for cannabis and training. It's important to eat right after you train. So you have a window of 30 to 90 minutes to get nutrients in where you're going to benefit the most from them. If you wait longer, that's fine, but you're not going to get as much from the nutrition. So if you do use cannabis to increase your appetite, then do so right after training and before you consume food so that your appetite is at its best. I've had a passion project for the last 3 years or so. It's called Big Brain Cannabis and bigbraincannabis.com. It is a big collection of peer-reviewed studies that identifies, they're all quantified, and it pulls out the information about how much of each compound is needed to be consumed according to the literature for whatever condition you're seeking to treat. This is just based on the evidence. And according to the data in there, for sleep, the best ratio is 1:1 THC to CBD with some linalool. And for appetite, it is 2:1 CBD to THC. For me, a huge factor in what product to consume. So I only stick to flowers, and there's a big difference between old flower and new flower. So if you have the kind of flour that's crumbs at the bottom of your bag, then for me, that has sometimes the opposite effect. I get irritable, does not help much with the munchies, and does not help me sleep. But if I get something that's like spongy and tested or cured and ready to consume within the last month or so, then it works significantly better for me. And so whenever I go to a dispensary, I annoy the bud tenders and ask them, what flower has been tested most recently? And they go to the back, they look through all of them, they get the most recent one. And that most of the time is a lifesaver for me. The negatives. So if you go to the gym and you're high, don't get under really heavy weight. It could be dangerous. It could be dangerous for you. It could be dangerous for others. If your reaction speed is lower, is worse, and you don't react the same way as you would when you're fully sober, then you could be putting yourself at risk. So avoid that at all costs. If you do go to the gym and you're high, then spend time stretching. It's enjoyable. You can work on technique, or you can go for a run. A lot of people like running when they're high. In weightlifting and a lot of other sports, there's a concept of rigidity. It's the ability to stop on a dime. And in weightlifting specifically, it's you're picking heavy weight up, but then you have to get under it fast enough so that it doesn't gain momentum. If it does gain momentum, then you're gonna have a hard time trying to stop it. And for the following few days after smoking a good amount, you're not gonna have good rigidity, and you're gonna be soft and just you don't want to try to catch really heavy weight the few days after smoking a lot. So do avoid that. Next, tolerance breaks. So I was saying earlier that you train months in a row, but in reality, no one can train at their full capacity for many months in a row. The best athletes in specifically weightlifting, that's where I have the experience, can train for more than 4 to 5 weeks at their capacity. After they do, they take 1 week, that's a deload week, where weights are lower and they don't lift them as many times. And for all other lifters, the rest of us, we can't go for more than 2 to 3 weeks in a row of really heavy lifting at our capacity. So that's when we take a week-long break. Use that week-long break to take a break from the cannabis because you don't need it. You're not gonna need it to help you sleep or eat, and it'll also help you freshen up so that when you actually do need it, it'll be more useful. Lastly, lotions and topicals. So in weightlifting, your body hurts, joints, muscles, everything. First off, of course, try to treat that so you're not masking it with lotions or whatever else. Try to actually fix it. But if you do need to train and you want to train through whatever's happening, then for me, THC and CBD lotions alone don't help. If they have menthol and arnica in them, then they do sometimes, but it's just masking a problem. Sometimes it's enough, and sometimes it's not. And now the legal side of cannabis in sport. So years ago, I was invited to try out for the US bobsled team. And this was at the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid. No one grows up bobsledding. Or at least I don't think anyone grows up bobsledding. And so the bobsled team invited representatives from, I think, 20 or 30 different sports. And they had sprinters and weightlifters and wrestlers and whatever else. And one evening we, as a group, not everyone, but a good group goes out, and the topic of cannabis comes up. Who used it? What did they do? And maybe half the people there had the same attitude of, it's really useful to relieve stress, to increase appetite, to sleep. And except for one person, and that person was my roommate who was on the US team for archery and pistols. And he said that in his sport, specifically THC, cannabis, is a significant performance enhancing drug. And for shooters, they use it, they shouldn't, but when they do, it's because for those that smoke enough, it lowers your heart rate and helps you aim. And so back to the legal side. WADA oversees WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency, oversees all of the testing for sports, anti-doping testing. And if there's a compound that has been shown to help in any sport, then it cannot be used in any sport. And with that, THC is not allowed in sport, as in competition, but it is allowed out of competition. And WADA has two different kinds of tests. They have the in competition test, which is, right after you're finished lifting, there's someone that says, come with me, you're getting tested. And the out of competition test is someone shows up at 6 a.m. in the morning to your home and says, pee in this cup. And you have to pee in that cup. And so THC is allowed out of competition as much as you want, as are all cannabinoids. But in competition, CBD is allowed, but no other cannabinoids are. So if you do consume CBD and you're about to compete and think that you may be tested, make sure that you don't consume any kind of CBD products that may have any other cannabinoids in there, because you can get popped. Any questions?
So I have a ton of questions, and we have a pretty big audience. So maybe we'll start with what other people might have as questions, and I can throw up a couple that I have cooking. So if anybody has questions that's with us tonight, you can throw them in either the chat or the Q&A. Actually, while people are going, I can put up a couple of questions. So you actually just referred to this as this was cooking in my mind. I was going to ask you about the experience of others in the gym and their cannabis consumption, which is a little bit different than the competition folks. I mean, I understand the scenario changes when people are looking at stiff competition, but how prevalent is cannabis use among folks while you're training or sort of off the competition circuit?
Probably the same as the general population. A lot of people do consume.
Mm-hmm.
These folks tend to be more social, are the kind that try stuff that maybe others wouldn't. So maybe more cannabis consumption amongst athletes than amongst the rest of the population. Mm-hmm. I haven't surveyed, but just based on like friends, the few that don't.
I happen to, Seed Clinic happens to treat a couple professional athletes, and my perspective is different from what I'm hearing from them. That this is incredibly prevalent, especially these days. Both from the social side of things that helps people relax and unwind, but actually also as a post-workout routine. I have, for example, a couple NFL players that use the lotions like water. I mean, really, after every workout, in some cases before workouts, to help relax some of the muscle tissue. interestingly, it seems like the prevalence of smoking is really, really popular, really common. Um, and I get it because of the culture, obviously, and the social stuff, but I don't get it in terms of the chemistry. Because I see smoking as such a destroyer and incinerator. And my question is to pitch it to you. What do you think about it?
So smoking, if we're saying something to the general public, smoking is bad. Unless, no nuance, just smoking is bad. But a lot of top level athletes smoke and smoke cigarettes. And in specifically weightlifting, we have the snatch and the clean and jerk. And in competition, first you do the snatch, and then you have 45 minutes or so, and then you do the clean and jerk. And I've heard from many people that when they go during the Olympics, between warm-ups, between when finishing the snatch and starting the clean and jerk warm-up, they go to the bathroom to smoke, and they see a bunch of their competitors, athletes from all other countries, also smoking cigarettes. So, is it the worst thing in the world? Not for them.
I get it, but in terms of the chemistry, it's a little bit confusing. If you really like marshmallows, it's a little bit weird to throw it right onto the burning hot embers, right? That's not so tasty. And obviously with inhaling cannabis, you're not quite eating it, but you're also destroying some of the compounds. How do you think about that? How do you understand smoking? If we're talking about temperatures that are in some cases 10 times the ceiling of boiling points of cannabinoids.
So I guess you would weigh the benefits and the risks, the harm, right? And the harm of smoking a little bit, maybe even coughing, versus not being able to recover from putting your body under the kind of stress that it wasn't built to recover from. Those are two, one outweighs the other one significantly. And so if you can decrease your stress, enjoy yourself, eat and sleep and wake up the next day and train because of it, then that far outweighs the
liabilities. Right on. Okay, so we have a question here from the audience. How do you determine which sources to trust for CBD only products around competition prep? That's a great question.
Okay, so if you go to a dispensary, then all products in a dispensary have to have been tested in a accredited laboratory, and it's not worth it for anyone in that chain to falsify any data. So you will get the products that you think that you're getting. The label is going to be close enough to exactly that. In terms of other products, many of the better CBD companies, they provide certificates of analysis. And you can request it from them, and they should be able to provide it to you just by email. And in there, you'll be able to see what the results are from testing. If they say that they don't want to provide it, then don't get CBD from them.
I agree completely. I think the couple additions I would throw in there. Most of the dispensaries are in the business of THC, and they might sell CBD products, but there's CBD plus a little bit of THC. And to highlight the point you made, a very important point earlier, if the competition is sniffing out THC, even small amounts of THC can trigger a positive result. So the difference, I guess, the hunt for someone who's looking for pure CBD is to look for pure CBD, not whole spectrum, not full plant CBD. Do you agree?
So, yes, just one nuance. The tests are for THC. I don't think that they're actually testing for other cannabinoids, but the rule is you can't have other cannabinoids.
Which is actually a really interesting puzzle, because there's some controversy in the literature. There was a study. There are a few studies that look at stomach acid, and they put CBD in with stomach acid, and CBD and THC are very similar, actually, almost identical in terms of the chemistry. And when you mix acid, you really should get THC out of that. That's just a natural thing of a fact of chemistry.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't
happen.
you know, people who consume pure CBD still do sometimes test positive for THC. So it's a gamble. But you know, maybe people process the CBD differently. You know, there's a lot we don't know about it. But I always warn some of my professional athletes who are in the same kind of position that, you know, really just make a very educated decision. Sometimes maybe avoid cannabinoids altogether if your livelihood is on the line. Cool. All right, more questions. Cooking. Let me see. Okay. So a more central question to your expertise and experience with weightlifting and cannabis together. I have a lot of people who use cannabis while they're doing athletics, not in the recovery phase, and not so much just for stretching and kind of technique as you suggested, but to push through their limits. That, you know, whether it's relaxing someone enough that they can kind of override their own limits, or some kind of muscle relaxation phenomenon with the anti-inflammatory properties of the cannabinoids. Have you noticed that consumption of cannabis helps you push through limits?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
But different people react differently, and there could be different blockers that like I don't have that others do that it helps with.
Well, but at the top of the chain of athletics, it's important to see that your reaction is different. I mean, that's you know, important.
Yeah. And with the safety piece, with heavy weights, it's just something that an injury is something that can break a career.
Sure.
Not worthwhile.
Not worth playing with. Yeah, no, makes sense. You'd mentioned running as a sort of connection, I guess, with cannabis, that people who are running maybe have, you know, well, what is it that they have with cannabis that you think is helpful? What is it about the cannabis that's helping? Huh?
They enjoy it.
So just
what I understand. Yeah. A good distraction. Just I have friends that go for a run after smoking.
Okay, and what if we take stretching or the technique sort of facilitation that you were talking about? What is it about the cannabis that's changing the technique, or changing the focus, or changing the stretching?
So I'd say with stretching, it's your ability to maybe just like lay there in one position, distract yourself, think about something else, enjoy the moment, where otherwise you're kind of thinking about the next thing to do. And if you're in the gym already, you never give yourself enough time to stretch. You know, if you can't be lifting the weights that you wanted to lift, you may as well stretch, which is also beneficial.
I was just going to steal your expertise while we have you. In your ideal regimen, how much stretching are you doing? How much lifting are you doing? How much resting? What's the sort of ratios of those?
Oof. So you have, this might get too detailed. Okay, so you have different blocks of training. You don't train the same way throughout the year. You have 4 competitions throughout the year, every 3 months. And you have 3-month blocks because of that. And each 3-month block is divided into a couple different phases. One of them is the training to train phase. And that's when you really work on flexibility and mobility and all that kind of stuff. And you spend maybe like a third of the time that you're in the gym stretching, getting mobile. Recovery is the entire time that you're not at the gym. And so one third of the time that you're in the gym stretching, 2/3 some sort of training, and the rest resting. During the volume phase, when we're actually lifting as much, like the goal is to get more tons lifted this week than last week for maybe like 9 weeks straight. And at that time, it's good to stretch, but that's when you don't have the energy. That's when cannabis helps the most. And that's when you need to do stretch, but like you really don't have that much energy for it. Maybe 2%, 5% of the time stretching. And then leading up to competition, this is when you're lifting the heaviest weights. Again, not that much. Like I guess you front load the stretching at the beginning of the training cycle more than throughout.
Awesome. Thank you. I mean, I can hear all the men and women out there that love weightlifting wanting to hear your thoughts. Okay, another question from the audience. Is there any time or situation where you would choose, or you know other athletes who would choose edibles over flower?
I don't know. For me, never.
Never edibles.
No, not for the benefits that it gives me for training.
Mhm.
I enjoy edibles, but if I'm feeling that, okay, I really need to eat right now, but I'm not hungry, I need something that works right away.
Mhm.
And the biggest benefit that I gain from cannabis is not the long-lasting effects of CBD. It's the instant, I need to get hungry, I'm hungry, and I really need to fall asleep.
Mhm.
Help me.
Awesome.
And that's smoking.
Two follow-up questions. One from the same person who asked the question, another from me. What about for injury recovery or pain management? You feel the same way?
I mean, pain management is kind of the short-term thing that you need to do when you really should be fixing the injury.
Mm.
And so pain management, I guess, use whatever you can, and you need to manage the pain enough so that it does not affect your technique. Like everyone can train when they're hurting, but if you're skewed because of it, then you're going to build the wrong muscles, probably get more injured, get bad habits, not worthwhile. So if you need to mask your injuries, then wrap it up with whatever you need, and do use whatever supplements help. For me, it really is menthol and arnica salves and lotions. Ones that have THC and CBD seem to help a little bit more. But I really need to make sure that it has something other than just THC and CBD.
Mhm.
And for long-term injuries, you have to attack the injuries actively. You can't lay in bed and wish for the injury to go away. It's not going to. You need to be active. One of the sayings is try to not limp. So if you're limping, then you're kind of given too much to this injury, and there's going to be a lot of other bad systems built around it. So if you can walk slower, try to use the muscles that are around it, recover from the injury. And one of the things that is needed to recover is stay hydrated,
Mhm.
eat, and sleep. Cannabis helps.
Awesome. So my question was about the new fad. I'm sure you've seen or perhaps seen it in the lab, if not at the stores. And that's the cans of seltzer water that are medicated. They've certainly popped up in Massachusetts, but I know that they're in Colorado and out west too. Those work very quickly, unlike normal edibles, and they don't last very long. So they're sort of an edible equivalent of the stuff we're used to in the smoking world. Any experience with those? Any thoughts about
it? No experience. My thoughts are that I'd love to try it.
Fair enough. You and everybody else, they're selling out like hotcakes. Cool. Any other questions from the audience? And okay, then my follow-up question is about sports. I guess as we move forward, what are your predictions for how cannabis will be either regulated or involved in athletics? I mean, we're all starting to see some leniency with some of the major sports groups, and I'm sure it's prevalent anyway, whether it's allowed or not. What are your thoughts about the future?
I think it's going to keep going in the same direction. It'll be more and more allowed. It'll just be age restricted. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I think it will be allowed in competition for at least some sports. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's heading that direction, and there's little pushback because there's almost no evidence that it's going to harm many people, mm-hmm. or that it does harm people. With weightlifting, I don't think it should be allowed. Bobsled, I don't think should be allowed. Anything where you can actually get hurt, mm-hmm. I'd say let's avoid that.
I agree completely. All right. Any other questions while we have Yasha here? Wow, time flies. Okay. Awesome. So this was a fantastic presentation. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to have your expertise and your sharing. If people have follow-up questions, we usually direct them to the clinic. We have an email address, questions@cedclinic.com, and we'll pass them on to you if that's okay with you. And how do people get in touch with MCR Labs if they're interested in testing their own homegrown products? What do you
Yeah,
recommend?
go to the website or hit us up on any social media. We answer questions there right away. Call us. You can get the phone number from Google or from the website. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for spending the time. This is a real privilege.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.